Good morning. This is Haley Solomon with the North Carolina Housing Coalition. Thank you for joining us this morning for our housing call. And without further ado, I will turn it over to our Director of Housing Policy, Stephanie Watkins-Cruz.
Good morning, everyone. I hope you all are having a great week so far. We're going to go ahead and kick it off. We have some organizational updates, and it's going to be a really great week, actually. At the end of this week, we are going to have the first Learning Collaborative through a collaboration that we have with the Division of Public Health. This project is being led by one of my awesome colleagues and teammates, Alex Rubenstein. And just to give you an overview of the project, so this collaboration with the Division of Public Health and the North Carolina Housing Coalition has been dealing with researching and engaging communities around the state in order to better understand the housing barriers that justice-involved populations face, as well as those that are struggling with opioid addiction and that are at risk of overdose. This project, we have been particularly focused on really the interdisciplinary cross-sector interventions that are needed to address both the housing needs and the service needs of these vulnerable populations. Some of the goals of the project include just year one really was to write a landscape analysis looking at both national data trends and best practices, and also what this issue looks like across the state of North Carolina. Over 70 individuals were interviewed from a wide spectrum of sectors, and in particular, it was really interesting to find out what kind of cross-sector collaborations already exist, but also where we need to strengthen and where we need to do better in order to serve those that are justice involved and at risk of overdose. The project is winding down this upcoming spring of 2024. We'll have a final report to publish, so stay tuned for that. But in the meantime, there will be several other engagement opportunities that are part of the deliverables, and one of those things is the Learning Collaborative. So during the second and final years of the project, we have been working on an advocacy toolkit with information about what kinds of best practices and interventions would be most effective in removing barriers to accessing and maintaining housing. And then we're also really interested in engaging stakeholders around the opioid settlement funds that are coming to North Carolina and what kinds of ways that this money can be used towards housing intervention. Finally, we will be hosting 6 learning collaborative sessions with experts from North Carolina to discuss their work on this topic. Presenters will span across multiple disciplines, from public health to the legal field to local government to community-based providers. So our first one of those learning collaboratives is happening this Friday, November 10th, 2023. And we'll be having this learning collaborative with colleagues from the North Carolina Healthcare Foundation. They're going to be discussing issues around the opioid crisis and their multiple initiatives that they have focused on working with hospitals and health systems to advance alternatives to opioids, accelerate adoption of best practices, as well as improving care continuity and coordination among hospitals and community partners. Last time we checked, we have over 100 people registered for this learning collaborative. It is virtual. Registration details will be included in the call notes. So if this is something that you're interested in, whether you're involved in it or you would just love to know more, you are absolutely welcome to join. If you're not able to join this time, be on the lookout for our next learning collaborative session, which is going to be on January 12th, 2024, with colleagues from the Wilson Center for Science and Justice at Duke Law. If you're interested in being involved, we'll include Alex's email in the call notes as well. It's a really wonderful project, and I've just learned a lot just from the past few months of being more engaged with it. Moving on to federal updates. According to the new House Speaker, Mike Johnson, lawmakers worked over the weekend on a stopgap funding measure to fund the government beyond the current November 17th deadline. At the same time, they are continuing to work on appropriation bills. The House plans to vote on its version of the Transportation, Housing, and Urban Development, THUD, spending bill, and several other unfortunate, harmful amendments this week. The vote was initially planned for last Friday, but got delayed after some members opposed the bill due to cuts to funding for transportation programs. The Senate passed its fiscal year 2024 THUD spending bill on November 1st, and what they called a minibus bill. The minibus passed with broad bipartisan support and with no real problematic amendments related to HUD. While both the House and Senate fiscal year 24 draft bills provide increased funding for some housing priorities, including housing choice vouchers, native housing, and homelessness assistance grants, the House bill proposes significant cuts to and even the elimination of many HUD programs. And because of dramatic rent increases last year, neither bill provides enough resources to renew all existing housing choice voucher contracts, so meaning some people will lose their access to housing, to this really critical service if this is what ultimately gets passed and goes through. So this is a perfect time, advocates, practitioners, to really urge your representatives to support the highest level of funding possible for affordable housing and homelessness programs and to really oppose these harmful amendments. This is not the time to be cutting funding for housing and community development. This is not the time to be doing that whatsoever. It never is the time, but with the way that prices have been rising, the cost of living has been going up, just the risks alone with the folks currently depending on these programs would be astronomical. So we really want to make sure that we continue reminding our representatives how important it is to fund these programs to the highest level as possible. State update. So today is election day. If you weren't able to participate in early voting, no worries. You can vote today. It's the last day. There are several municipal races across the state, and even though local elections typically get less attention than presidential congressional elections, the outcomes of these races, y'all, have a huge, huge impact on policies needed to advance affordable housing and various other critical social issues. I voted this morning in and out, so shout out to the folks in Orange County for that. And if you haven't already, just please don't forget to vote. It's really quick and easy. There's a lot of good information out there. You can find the info for your polling place and also sample ballots on the North Carolina Board of Elections website at ncsbe.gov. And then also I've noticed a lot of local government and local Board of Elections have been posting really great resources as well, so make sure to do that. Moving on to local community updates, the Dare County Commissioners approved the creation of an affordable housing task force last month that will include officials from each of the county's towns, as well as representatives of local businesses. The group's mission will go beyond the short-term goal of building several different housing developments to also focusing on collaboratively addressing housing affordability in the county over the long term. The task force will convene its first meeting after the November 7th municipal elections. The Lumbee Tribe of North Carolina has been awarded $7.4 million for affordable housing from the North Carolina Office of Recovery and Resiliency. These funds are going to be used to increase the availability of safe, affordable housing in areas of the state that experienced major damage from Hurricanes Matthew and Florence. The Lumbee Tribe of North Carolina's initiative looks to build 30 single-family homes in the tribal territory that will be available to households earning 80% AMI or below. In addition to the funds awarded to the Lumbee Tribe, several different Eastern North Carolina communities have also been selected to receive funding. They'll receive about $35 million collectively from the North Carolina Office of Recovery and Resiliency's Affordable Housing Development Fund. And some of those communities include Scotland County, Maysville and Jones County, Pamlico County, Beulahville and Duplin County, and several different unit and several different affordable housing developments will be built with that funding. And there's even a partnership with a few private developers as well as the North Carolina Housing Finance Agency. The town of Carrboro has selected a new director of housing and community services after a nationwide search for candidates. Anne Marie Vanneman previously served as interim director for Housing and Community Services Department and has worked on affordable housing in the town and throughout Orange County for more than 15 years. So congratulations to Anne Marie. Winston-Salem officials are considering creating a housing trust fund to address rising rents and the lack of affordable housing options throughout the city. The city has a shortage of more than 16,000 affordable rental homes, according to a study that was done in 2018. Officials voted in a committee meeting in October to direct city staff to research the development of a housing trust fund. a formal proposal is expected to be presented to council by early next year. So this is a great step. I had a great conversation with local radio host in Winston-Salem yesterday about the importance of practices like this at the local government level when local governments want to get involved in creating as well as preserving affordable housing. So really excited to see how this develops. Also in Winston-Salem, the city sold a dozen vacant lots for $1 each to enable and facilitate the development of affordable single-family homes for households earning 80% AMI and below. So again, some cool things coming out of Winston-Salem. I'm really interested in seeing how that continues to develop. We have several reports and resources for you in the call notes. Just to point out a few, a really powerful piece from Shelter Force talking about helping tenants with mental health challenges that are at risk of eviction, as well as a piece from the Century Foundation talking about how zoning promotes inequality in education. So a good example of highlighting the intersection between housing and education and land use. So none of this is in a silo. And then the UNC School of Government on the Community Economic Development blog put out a piece about the recent trends in real estate development for the fall of 2023. Some events to lift up. The North Carolina, the National Low Income Housing Coalition, Opportunity Starts at Home, where OSA campaign will be having a virtual webinar on multi-sector advocacy, a look ahead, on November 9th at 2:30 p.m. The Housing Solutions Lab will be having a data talks, will kick off a data talks webinar series on local housing data on November 16th from 12 to 12:45 p.m. And then on Monday, the Hope North Carolina Hope NC Inclusive Housing Summit will be happening at the NCSU McKimmon Center from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. And we will confirm what that date is for you all in the call notes. In the news, there's just a few pieces here. Mortgage rates are at 8%, and this makes for a really brutal U.S. housing market and makes it even worse. And then a North Carolina Newsline piece calls out how the Biden administration is calling for emergency funding to combat the opioid crisis. So that's all we have this week for you. There are a few other pieces in there if you're interested in checking it out. We'll double check that date for the Hope NC Inclusive Housing Summit for you. And I hope you all have a great rest of your week. Remember, please don't hesitate to reach out if you need anything or if you would like us to talk about anything in particular. If you have questions about the Learning Collaborative or the DPH project, we'll make sure to include Alice's email in the call notes for you. Have a great rest of your week, and I'll talk to you next time.